Well, I want to first find out from you, Alex, why it was important for you to not just explore the personal aspects of mental illness, but also the familial impacts
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. I mean, I really wanted to shed sort of a comedic light on other parts of it that I feel like people don't really know about. There's so much focus on the sort of very extreme parts of mental illness and often like the most like depressing and the darkest ones. But I've been treated for bipolar disorder for over 10 years now, and most of living with it is just like everyday life, and some of it is mundane and some of it's funny and some of it sucks, and it's just like anything else. You just live with it, and I wanted to show what I think is a more sort of realistic portrayal of that.
Yeah.
um and then the familial part of it is another part that I think is so important, because when you take this on, sort of, especially as a young person, your family is often very affected by it. I think having I have three sisters, and mom and dad who I lived with, and they were all learning about the illness and dealing with me and my antics and my highs and lows. So it really is, I think, about how everyone weathers this together.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. That's what I appreciated so much about this film, which I think is rarely seen on screen,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is just, yeah, how it impacts every relationship around you and how that it's this sort of symbiotic relationship. And it's hard. It's like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? It's like it's hard on our loved ones, but if our loved ones aren't supporting us, it's hard on us. And we're trying to figure out the tools to
Yeah.
be able to, figure this landscape out as well as they're learning the tools as well.
Yeah.
And that's where some of that humor comes from. It's that
Mm-hmm.
friction. And like I said, as someone who's battled mental illness, I know far too well the work that needs to be put in with ourselves and with our loved ones. My husband and I have had countless discussions, about this. Wyatt, I would love to know how do we see that sort of balance that's explored, specifically with your character as the younger brother, who's being affected by Clemence's actions and her illness, but is also just navigating being a high schooler.
Yeah, I think Alex very masterfully wrote this character to kind of be the one in the family who's like the least involved with all the antics and stuff, and like he's just totally checked out in terms of trying to understand or even like empathize with Clemens. But I think there's definitely still, like he's a part of the family. Of course, he cares about her, and of course, he loves her. But that those aren't shown um, until we get more specific moments with just the two of them, like when she walks in and I'm sleeping and she's whatever, and there's like a hint of like, oh god, like she's doing this again, maybe, and then she just kind of has a very vulnerable moment, and I think um, that respect for siblings can be hard to maintain and even like foster. So it's like it's interesting to see his growth throughout the movie, because it's not like a there's not like a shift. There's not like a scene where he's like, oh, okay, wow, I really respect her. It's just like it's very real. It's very like this is just what we have to help. This is what we have to help with. This is who we have to deal with, and like you learn to love the people who you're surrounded by. So
Yeah, it's beautifully said. I mean, I think one of the most impactful moments is when he goes to the basement. He's like, "Y'all want to watch The Matrix?" Like that spoke volumes, right? It's
yeah,
like we knew what that moment was about.
yeah,
And yeah, it was just. I mean, Alex, I was just like, or Wyatt, when you read the script and you saw the beautiful characters. I mean, Alex, like the way that you create this family, it almost felt the film almost felt improvised in so many ways, because it felt so naturally complex, and imperfect, and the dynamics were just so were so genuine and authentic. I guess my question is, I would love to hear that process of sort of creating the little intricacies of the family dynamic, and then Wyatt just reading that on the page, your response to that.
Yeah, thank you so much. That is so, so kind. I mean, it starts from a place of like the relationships in my own life. I mean, even Ashik's character, like, while not all of the events in the movie are exactly what happened to me, everyone in the movie is inspired by someone who has come through my mental health journey. Some are like direct rips, like the psychiatrist, exactly like my psychiatrist, my first psychiatrist. So, but anyway, so it starts from definitely a super intense personal connection, but where I think some of those intricacies really come in is just like the nature of working on something for several years. Because the first draft that I wrote as a senior in college was 100 times more on the nose than this is. And it's like with every year and every new iteration of the story, you take away another like obvious layer and you dig deeper and deeper. And actually, ironically, by digging deeper, it almost is like you take away things that you don't need and you make it like simple and concise, and then the audience reads into it and they put two and two together instead of having everything spelled out for them, you know? I don't
like
know if
the
that
Matrix line.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not he doesn't need to come downstairs and be like, hey guys, I know I've been distant, but can we just do something together? Like, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, like it's simpler than that. So
Mm-hmm. Oh,
yeah.
but man, it takes work to get it to be that simple. Like,
Yeah,
I don't think audiences realize, like,
yeah.
yeah. Wyatt, go ahead. How did you feel when you read this script?
Yeah, I just remember reading it and just feeling like it was really smart, like, and it felt very finely tuned and well written and well edited. You know, like I could tell you it's been through a lot of drafts, and like it's so well constructed. Like everything kind of fits together, but everything also feels so natural. So like that's another hard balance to do, which is like trying to convince your audience that this is a very natural story while also tying and weaving everything together. And I think I really felt that from the script. And then yeah, I found all the relationships between the characters to be very, I'm just going to keep saying the same thing. It just felt very real. And I really appreciate that Alex was able to be a little vulnerable here and put parts of her life into this film. And I think it really paid off because I think it helps people connect to it more. So it certainly helped me connect to it while reading. So
yeah. Oh, lovely. I think we kind of touched upon this a little bit, but I also just really appreciated how the film explores the continued journey of mental health, well after the diagnosis is given, after the medication has been prescribed, round one, round two, dosage, all of that, which again, we rarely see on film, which is I think, because from someone who's gone through that journey, never seeing it represented on screen and not having sort of an expectation of what I was walking into, it can be quite overwhelming and mentally exhausting, being like, wait, I can't just take the thing and it goes away. So I love that your film really continues the journey and shows that mental illness is not something that is easily fixed, and that it's not about fixing it. I would love to know from both of you, what do you think are some of the biggest, misconceptions about mental health that this film really aims to challenge or destigmatize?
Definitely a huge focus for me, and maybe what's the most autobiographical part of this movie is the idea of treatment never ending. And that is kind of neither uplifting nor discouraging. It's, in a way, it's neutral, and it is what you make of it. It's like you know, and if you can just grow like a tiny bit, and maybe you don't make a massive comeback or whatnot, but if you can just like become a little more self-aware and try a little bit harder, I mean, that's a massive accomplishment. So I wanted to show that. And I mean, to be on a little serious note, when I left my freshman year of college, I did not know anyone. I mean, this was like over 10 years ago now, so it's like it was like a little less talked about at that time. I certainly didn't know anyone. I didn't have anyone to talk to about it except a classmate from my school who had taken a couple years off and returned, and she had bipolar disorder. I talked to her on the phone like every day, and she kind of walked me through it a lot. She was the pinnacle of what it meant for me to make a comeback and what I aspired to be. She died a few years after that, and that deeply affected me in a lot of different ways that I still can't fully process. But one thing that was very hard for me to take away from that was this idea that like it's never over. It's never like you beat it and then you're fine. It's like you have to have this sort of diligence wired into you forever, and you have to find a way to live or like just live with that, but also still be happy and find joy and laughter. And so that was very depressing, but it was also inspiring in a way, really important.
Oh, well, I'm so sorry for your loss, but thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah.
For sure.
Wyatt, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to say I appreciate that this movie is normalizing it. I mean, it's like it should seem obvious at this point for us who are in the know, but it's like this happens to people. I mean, this is like a very normal situation, which it's like weird because it doesn't feel like it because it's not represented in media. It's not like a common thing that you see in movies. It's just like, you know, and hopefully one day we won't even have to have this conversation, but it's like it's good to I wouldn't say introduce people to this, but like this movie does such a great job at like slowly helping people understand what that's like to be on both sides of that coin, whether you're the person helping the person with the mental illness or you have it. Like it just shows empathy. It gives you empathy for each side, and like I think Alex does a lot with comedy to help remedy that kind of like transition, or not transition, that I don't know what word I'm looking for here, but
a safe space to explore and to discuss. Like,
right.
Yeah. It's brilliant in that way. Yeah, I always say the best stories educate and create empathy, and if you can just do that just a smidge, you know. So this has been so lovely. Thank you for your honesty and for your time. My last question, which I always love to ask. What did this journey, being a part of this film, creating this film, playing these characters, what have you, teach you most about yourselves along the way?
Why do you want to go first?
Oh, I was hoping that you wouldn't say that.
Sorry, broke the pattern.
No, I'm trying to think of something that I could say quickly, but I can't. Let's see. I'm like helpless. Like I am so intimidated by how amazing Alex is. Like I know this isn't really the question, but like I've learned that like, I mean, she wrote, directed, and acted in this. Like, and that like, it's telling me that I wouldn't even be close to ready for that. And I think I'm just like, I have a lot of time to I don't know. This is not a good answer.
I think it's a wonderful answer.
I think it's a great answer, and I think it ties directly into my answer, which is like, you might, you know, I would be proud to say that like I wasn't ready for this. I you know, diving into my first feature that I was also starring in, like which by the way was greenlit like at the 11th hour right before we shot it. We had 2 weeks of prep. I mean, in a city I don't live in. So nothing really prepares you for it, I would say. And the thing that will get you through it, from my perspective, is just like having the most amazing team that you can have, because that turns it into a collaborative effort, like making this thing you're making. So for me as a first time actor who's completely afraid of that, and also playing a version of myself that's gone through like a lot of trauma in a way, the best thing I could have done for myself in that situation was cast a group of like very seasoned actors who, first of all, didn't need like a ton of directing, to be honest. Like, I mean, we worked together beforehand, but they got me and they got the story, and they brought so much to it that wasn't even in the script. And so you have that, and they're just naturally talented and they just get it. But they also like brought something out of me that I don't know, if it could have just came out of nowhere. I mean, so I definitely feel very uplifted by my cast and just all my collaborators. And that's been hugely growthful. It's just like now feeling a little bit more like a peer among all these people who I really respect and got to work with.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, Steve Buscemi's your dad. Like, how can you go wrong?
Totally, yeah.
Steve Buscemi. Don't know if you heard of him.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Well, thank you so much again. I truly loved the film, and I'm just so happy that y'all get to now share it with an audience who are going to equally as fall in love with it and see themselves in it or see their loved ones in it, as you mentioned.